shout out to my people. Green, silver, black, and white, always repping for my Eagles. Hey, hey, welcome to the podcast, we gon' keep it real. Get it hype when the team stepping on the field. We all we got, we all we need. Philadelphia Eagles, lock in with me. It's a Philly thing, you ready? Let's go.
Righto. What is up? What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. Listen, before we even get into the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders division review, let's just say LeBron James to the Philadelphia 76ers. Kudos to them on the vet minimum for 2 years, $8 million. You got a quality player here. I believe he's the greatest player of all time, but that's neither here nor there. They got a two-way wing. Well, I shouldn't say that. They got a wing who can facilitate the offense and in spots give you some help on the defensive side of the ball. Joel Embiid being there, you're not going to necessarily have a in-the-paint presence without a LeBron James. You got great wings on the outside with Edgecombe. You got Maxey and Jaylen Brown. And in the playoffs, listen, the Philadelphia 76ers have not been out of the second round in the trust the process era. LeBron James lives, especially coming out of the East and in his prime in the finals. So, big signing, big deal. Was not necessarily expecting that. So kudos to them for getting that done. Neither here nor there. That's enough NBA talk. We're here to talk about the Washington Commanders and the Philadelphia Eagles in this NFC division review before training camp begins next week. So, listen, this is going to be an interesting episode for me because, one, I'm learning a lot of the young players that are on this team. So will you. And any Commander fan, if there's anything in the comment section that you need to correct me on in regards to expectations on certain players, by all means, feel free to go ahead and do it. This is just based on whatever little knowledge that I am aware about in regards to the Washington Commanders. I'm an Eagles channel. I talk about the Birds. That's who I talk about. So this is going to be fun. With quarterback Jaden Daniels and all that jazz, they all had a rough year last season with injuries and stuff. So going through this roster and going through some of the picks that they made and some of the acquisitions and some of the departures that they've made on this roster might be a little bit surprising in terms of how close some of the matchups are in terms of expectations and player talent and things like that. So definitely some work needs to be done in Washington, no doubt about it, but we're going to go through it position by position and compare it to the Philadelphia Eagles position by position. All right. But before we do that, let me introduce everybody to this show. This right here is the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast. I am your host, Asif Badi, and like you, I am a Birds fan and talks about the Birds, only the Birds, and nothing but the Philadelphia Eagles. So please do us a favor here, help us grow this channel organically by shooting this video a thumbs up, commenting your thoughts in the comment section below, and subscribing to the channel. Also, check us out on audio platforms such as Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and leave a 5-star review, because in the end, it does not cost you a damn thing to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We appreciate your support on the opposite side of the camera, on the opposite side of the airwaves. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get right into the Washington Commanders starting lineup first. And Eagles fans, we know the Philadelphia Eagles starting lineup, and we're going to compare them in just a moment. But for the Washington Commander fans, first off, welcome to the show. Secondly, let's go through the starting lineup, starting with the starting five with the quarterback, the tight end. Some acquisitions have been made and some new additions have been made here in the offensive room for the Washington Commanders. Okay, we already know Jaden Daniels, how electrifying of a player he is. I think he's really, really good. I think this guy is a star, especially when he's healthy. But that's always been the biggest question mark. If he's healthy, when he's healthy, will he be able to hold up? Will he be able to get through a full season? Now, his rookie year, sensational. Arguably the greatest rookie campaign we have seen out of a quarterback in the NFL. And then the sophomore season, honestly, he was playing okay. Even though they didn't really win a lot of games, he was playing okay. And then he got hurt. And then it kind of fell apart from there. So coming off of injury, how will he bounce back? 2, New offensive coordinator now. Cliff Kingsbury is not there anymore, so it's going to be interesting to see how they all respond with the new offensive scheme with David Blow, a former quarterback who, again, there was one game that I saw David Blow play on the NFL level. I think it was with the Detroit Lions, and was absolutely electric. I don't think they won or played very well on offense, but he was absolutely electrifying. So I'm curious to see how he's going to fare as an offensive coordinator there in Washington. So that'll be very interesting to see. At the running back position, you got, I believe his name is Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. I know he has a nickname. I'm not aware of the nickname. Forgive me. But they also assigned Rachaad White, a backup for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who was a really good receiving back, talented player. Had some years where he was a starter. So the running back room is actually pretty good in Washington. They have a lot of guys there who can play. And then Jeremy McNichols is still there. Not that he's like a superstar type of running back or even necessarily a quality back, but he's a serviceable guy. So the running back room there, not bad. They got some good players there. So I kind of like what they got going on in the running back room. Now, compared to the Philadelphia Eagles with Saquon Barkley, Tank Bigsby, and Will Shipley, I'm going to lean towards Philadelphia Eagles. But like I said about the Commanders, there's some talented guys here, okay? And then in the wide receiver room, Scary Terry, one of the better and underappreciated wide receivers in the NFL. And then Antonio Williams, the guy they drafted out of Clemson, this guy has some upside. I think they really like him in Washington to the point where he's probably going to be starting him, Traylon Burks. They also have Dynamic White. They have Luke McCaffrey. They got some guys here. They also signed Van Jefferson, who's also there. I don't know if that's all, folks. I'm only kidding. The point being is I don't know if some of these guys are going to make the roster, but they got some veteran guys there. They got some guys who have been there, done that, and they have a young rookie here who I think they really like. I think Washington is excited to see play on the field. And then at tight end, Chig Okonkwo. Again, forgive me if that's even the correct pronunciation of the name or not. I have no idea. All I know is that he can play. He's not a bum of a tight end. More of a receiving guy, really good in terms of yards after the catch. He's got a lot of wheels in terms of being a mobile tight end. So the guy's got some talent here. And then obviously they have John Bates, who's more of a blocking tight end and stuff like that. So again, in terms of skill room, certainly could be a lot worse. It could be a lot better. There's no doubt about it. But you know what? Rachaad White, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Terry McLaurin, Antonio Williams, Dynami Brown, Van Jefferson, Traylon Burks, Antonio Williams, Luke McCaffrey. It's a good compilation of guys, okay? Kind of similar to what Philadelphia has in that you got one superstar kind of guy, a couple of veterans on the roster that you say, hey, you know what? They've been there. They've done that. They're playable. Like we have Elijah Moore. We have Dontavian Wicks. We have Johnny Wilson. Not that he's necessarily a receiver per se, but a guy who's been there, done that. And then you got a rookie here who primarily is going to operate in the slot, who has some upside, the team's excited about. It's the same thing with Mekhi Lemon as it is with Antonio Williams. And he came out of Clemson, so you know it's a good school. You always played against big programs. So being in the moment and playing under the big lights, I don't think it's going to bother him. And then Okonkwo, or Okonkwo, however you pronounce that name, forgive me. Again, it's just going to be very interesting to see because they have some talent there. And then we have Dallas Goedert, obviously. But it's going to, again, be really interesting to see how this offense looks without Cliff Kingsbury because I think that's going to affect the play of the offense, especially early on. But if they're able to survive their first stretch of the season, hey, who knows what can happen with this Washington Commanders lineup. Speaking of that, let's go to the next set of offensive starters here, and that's the offensive line. Here, this is an underrated group. Underrated group in Washington. They have some changes here, particularly at center. They moved Allegretti to center, who was actually a guard last season because they had Tyler Biadasz the last season and the past couple of seasons under the Dan Quinn regime here. Who now is an LA Charger. But this offensive line was one of the better offensive lines at run blocking. They were ranked 13th in the NFL as a PFF grade overall. So they had a really, really good season rushing the ball last season, getting a lot of yards per clip. Laramie Tunsil's got high pedigree. Chris Paul there, a good guard. Nick Allegretti, another good guard. Cosme over there. Again, he's one of the newer guys. And then Josh Connolly was their first-round draft pick of last season, who actually had a pretty good rookie campaign, all things considered, playing at the right side. So it's a young offensive line, a good offensive line, and it wasn't necessarily their fault that they didn't win a lot of games last season. The offense actually played relatively okay, despite the fact that Jaden Daniels got hurt about halfway through the season. But an upgrade in talent, an upgrade in position, some health coming back, just a little bit of a change up here on the offensive line. Like, how's Nick Allegretti going to be able to play center? Now, if he has a history of playing center, I am not aware of it. But going from, Bediash to Allegretti. Again, Allegretti's a good player, just it's a little bit different being the quarterback of the offensive line, being the center, snapping the ball to the quarterback, than it is playing a guard, being able to pull and just kind of react to whatever's around you and being in between the booth of a left tackle and center. Now you're one of the anchors of the offensive line, so that's going to be an interesting transition for him as a player. But all in all, this is a good group of offensive linemen here. It's a good crew. They are relatively healthy for the most part. I really don't have a lot of questions in regards to the offensive line for the Washington Commanders. It's really more so, how are they all going to react to the new offensive coordinator change, going from a guy like Cliff Kingsbury, who has proven himself to be a quality coach. And quite frankly, I used to shit on Cliff Kingsbury as a coach. He has grown to be a fine coach, and quite frankly, I think I'm wrong. I was wrong about him as a head coach, because his work in Arizona, the last time the Arizona Cardinals were any good was with Cliff Kingsbury, so you got to tip your cap to him. So he knows what he's doing. He knows how to maximize quarterback play. I'm curious to see how David Blow will do. Similar to Sean Mannion, how he has a little bit of a quarterback, some games under the league, played backup quarterback, was around some offensive guys, obviously around some good coaches in the league on the offensive side of the ball. Will he be able to bridge that gap with Jaden Daniels? I know Eagle fans are going to say, like, hey, we believe in Sean Mannion. Commander fans are going to be like, you know what, we believe in David Blow. Let's see what he's got. I'm not going to poo-poo the Commanders here in that sense. I think they have a lot of good stuff going on here on the offensive side of the ball. And it's really just a matter of, will their offensive scheme change garner success? That's really the question for me in regards to this offense, and I'm going to be curious to see how this all plays out. I'm sure Commander fans are as well. Let's now transition over to the defensive side of the ball here. Now we're going to go and look at this defensive line where they really struggled actually last season. Okay, here we are. This defensive line, ladies and gentlemen, had a really rough season last year. They were ranked 24th in PFF grade, and they have guys who can play. Like, Deron Payne can play. I believe this young man's name is Tim Settle. Yes, Tim Settle. He actually had a pretty good year. He could play. Javon Kinlaw had a rough year. And then they made some additional some acquisitions here with Odafe Owe, which we'll talk about in just a second. And then Dorrance Armstrong, excuse me. He's another young pass rusher who has a lot of game. He could play. Was under Dan Quinn's system in Dallas, who came here with the transition of the Washington Commanders. He's another guy who has got a lot of talent and actually had a pretty good year last season. So they just had a little bit of an underwhelming year in terms of expectations and in terms of what they needed to do. But their acquisitions that they've made, I think, can offset that with this Odafe Owe pick. And coming from the LA Chargers, an elite defense, coming from the Baltimore Ravens, who had a really good year, the only thing that he has suffered was an injury bug in Baltimore. And in 2023, he missed 4 games, played with Baltimore, went to the AFC title game that year, had 5 sacks during that run. In 2024, he had 10 sacks, so he's able to get after the quarterback. And then 2025, played with the Chargers, 7.5 sacks, and now he's with the Commanders and got a big contract, 4 years, $100 million contract. And it is very possible that this contract for a 25 million per year with a younger pass rusher. Could be one of the better contracts in terms of pass rushing guys in the NFL, especially considering we paid about that same amount of money for a guy like Jonathan Grenard, who, again, a veteran in this league, doesn't necessarily have the consistent play that Odafe Owe has over these last 2 to 3 years. Remember, the guy had about 5 sacks in his first year as a starter that went into the AFC title game for the Baltimore Ravens, then followed up that year with 10 sacks, and then the year after that followed it up with a 7.5 sack year season, and now he got a payday. So kudos to him. He got the job done, and it's going to be interesting to see what kind of production you get out of him. Now, I talked about Tim Settle before. He actually had a pretty good year last season. Now, again, the defense overall in Washington was not very good, but he had a nice year. They had another guy, Jaharon Newton, who played last season. He was not good. He was not a very, very good ball player. Was not good against the run, and that was one of the bigger things Washington had troubles with the defensive line. And then on the next levels, it was playing against the pass. I like the additions that they made here. I like Owe's addition. I like Tim Settle. Daron Payne, I know, just had a down year, but I think he's going to have a bounce-back year. Dorrance Armstrong, I think, can play. Javon Kinlaw, he should be better than what he was last season. Again, you got to believe in Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn's a good defensive coach. He's had a lot of success in this league. He's a grown-up. I think he's a good damn head coach. It's just going to be interesting to see how they bounce back from a year like that. And remember, they are going to have a third or fourth place schedule. Right, so that's the other thing that you have to kind of consider when you're predicting wins in the NFL. Do the Washington Commanders have a chance to win some ball games here? Yeah, especially when they're healthy. Jaden Daniels and that offense can score with a lot of people. So I like the additions that they made on the defensive side of the ball, particularly on the defensive line. And now we're going to kind of look at the linebackers here, because that's kind of one of the biggest question marks for me, in my opinion, in regards to this Washington Commanders team, because losing a guy like Bobby Wagner, a Hall of Fame linebacker who knows this defense, who's able to quarterback this defense. Now, listen, you replaced him with Sonny Styles, so I'm not going to necessarily say that it's a downgrade per se, but you know what? I know what Bobby Wagner is. Yeah, he's not great against the pass. He's an elite pass rusher, an elite against the run, and damn it, he had 100-plus tackles last season at his advanced age. So he's just a guy who just knows how to play. Louis Chenal, they added in the offseason. Frankie Louvu was there in their NFC title run and came last season. He had a little bit of a down year, but you know what? Guy can still play. He's a thumper. He can get after it. And then Kevon Chaisson, I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name. So again, forgive me for the pronunciation. Guy was on the Patriots last season. Played in a Super Bowl caliber defense, comes to the Washington Commanders, is going to be an upgrade. Like, it's just, that's just what they did. They upgraded at linebacker overall in terms of depth. And then you got a guy like this guy, Mr. Jordan McGee. I think he's more of a special teamer and a high energizer guy. They like him in Washington. He's going to make the roster on special teams. He just, again, typical linebacker who just likes to put his head down and just bull rush you. Can tackle, has a lot of energy. I like the guys that they got here. Again, it's an upgrade in overall depth and thus an overall increase in talent. It's just, I think, having Bobby Wagner back. Like, if you told me Jordan McGee was Bobby Wagner, I would feel so much different about the second level for the Washington Commanders. Genuinely. And I think even Commander fans will look at it and say, yeah, like, Bobby Wagner was not very good against the pass, but you know what? I'd rather have him in the building and him in the room with a guy like Sonny Styles. Again, elite talent Sonny Styles is. I just would feel a little bit better if Bobby Wagner were in the room. Now, it's not to say that Sonny Styles is going to come in and be a bust. I don't believe that. I think he's too good of a player and a prospect. I think Dan Quinn's too good of a coach to allow that to happen. Again, it's just more, I like having Hall of Fame players on my defense, Hall of Fame players on my offense. And if you're in the building and you're willing to come back, I'm going to bring you back. I think Bobby Wagner to this day is worth a roster spot. And for the Washington Commanders, again, an upgrade nonetheless at linebacker, but I would have felt better if Bobby Wagner were in the building with them. Lastly, the defensive backs here, ladies and gentlemen, for the Washington Commanders. This is a work in progress. Some interesting acquisitions here. Nick Cross is here. Again, a guy who was in Indianapolis, is a pretty damn good player. I only know this because my boy Justin does the Riding the Bench Colts podcast. He's an upgrade from what they had last season. This guy is a hitter. He plays against the run pretty well. Just a quality safety is what he is. He's a good player, versatile player, upgraded here. Trey Amos is a good cornerback. I think the youth on this team is going to help them out in terms of their improvement, obviously, overall. But Trey Amos is a good player. I do like Mike Sainristil still. Again, just a young player. I think last season or the year before was the rookie year. They have flashes, okay? Like they have ability here. They have talent. And they have ability. It's just a matter of, are they able to actually put it all together and be a consistent unit? Now, having a guy like Eric Robertson helps in the building. A veteran presence with young guys like this helps. And then a guy like Quan Martin, who, again, I don't know much about Quan Martin other than he's a box safety. And it's important in the NFC East in particular to have guys who are going to be really good against the run. Quan Martin can be pretty good against the run because he's going to be in the box. He's going to help out some of the guys on the back end there. He's going to help out the linebackers too, especially because a guy like Sonny Styles is versatile enough and a complete player enough to go out and drop back into the pass coverage. You could have schemes where Quan Martin comes down into the box and Sonny Styles drops back and kind of covers tight ends, while Quan Martin can almost play like a spy type of game or play against the run as an additional defender. And plus the acquisitions and improvements on the defensive line, I'm going to anticipate this Washington Commanders defense overall be improved with the Dan Quinn style of defense here. And some of the veteran presence that they have here with Amik Robinson, Nick Cross as an addition. Now they added a guy like Leo Chenal in the linebacker room, who's played in big games before. Odafe Owe has veteran pedigree here. He's had some seasons where he's had some success. So there's improvements on each level of the defense here that I think Commander fans should be excited about. Nonetheless, it's still a work in progress. You don't know exactly how it's going to turn out because pass coverage was something that they had a trouble stopping with last season. But overall, you can't be too down on the Commanders. I actually think, because of the schedule, the way it lays out, I think the Commanders are in position to fight for that second spot in the NFC East with Dallas and Philadelphia. Now, again, I am under the belief that the Philadelphia Eagles are in a rebuild year, but the schedule lays out such a way where they could potentially win 11 to 12 games, possibly. I believe it's more closer to the 9 or 10 win mark. And if it's correct, and if I'm correct in believing that they're going to win 9 to 10 games, the Washington Commanders are going to kind of be right around that same ballpark. Okay? Dallas, I believe, is going to be a little bit better than they were last season, albeit everybody had a career year on the offensive side of the ball, and they're going to come down to earth a little bit. But the Commanders are not that far off from being a contender in the NFC East. I know people believe that they were a joke last season, and a lot of it was due to injuries and age. They got more youth. They got more depth. They got better players now on the defensive side of the ball, and now they're healthier on the offensive side of the ball. And they've had some acquisitions on the offensive side of the ball, too, to make them a better unit. What's up, everybody? This is your host, Asif Badi of the Riding the Bike Eagles podcast. Listen, if you like what you're hearing thus far in this video, do me a favor here. Shoot this video a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and comment your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, check us out on audio platforms such as Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and leave a 5-star review because in the end, it doesn't cost me a damn thing to go ahead and do those things for a brother and another human being. So I appreciate your support on the opposite side of the camera. And without further ado, let's get on with the show. Now, in comparison to the Philadelphia Eagles, we know the deal here. I mean, you got quarterback Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, Devontae Smith, Mekhi Lemon, Dallas Goedert. And as I mentioned before, there's a lot more comparable, I guess comparable traits to one another on the offensive side of the ball. They both have first-time offensive coordinators who are backup quarterbacks in the league. You got dual-threat quarterbacks who the year prior had a disappointing year. And then you got one stud wide receiver, a rookie slot wide receiver, and a couple of other guys who are veterans in this league to round out the depth pieces of your starting wide receiver room. And then you have a tight end who can make some noise and make some plays with yards after the catch. Dallas Goedert is known to be a yards after the catch type of guy, and overall a complete tight end, although last season had a little bit of a down year in terms of his blocking. Overall, though, good player. And first-time offensive coordinator in Sean Mannion and David Blow. How will they look like calling plays in the NFL? We don't know. You got a head coach who has a Super Bowl title under their belts. Both Dan Quinn as a defensive coordinator and Nick Sirianni just a couple of years ago have Super Bowl titles. So there's a lot more in terms of the offensive skill room that's comparable to Washington. And I think Eagle fans tend to dismiss that. And I don't want to be somebody who does that to you. So I'm going to give the nod, obviously, to the Philadelphia Eagles because that is my bias. But it's a lot closer than people think, just because I do think a guy like Jaden Daniels in a vacuum is better than Jalen Hurts in terms of physical traits. However, durability, big game moments. Not that Jaden Daniels folds, because he doesn't fold, but there's a durability issue here with Jaden Daniels that you have to worry about that I don't necessarily worry about as much with Jalen Hurts. Obviously, we're better at running back with Saquon Barkley as opposed to Kwaski Merritt and Rashad White. Devontae Smith and Terry McLaurin, I do give the edge to Terry McLaurin, even though I do love Devontae Smith's game. Although I think the rest of the guys in the room, Mekhi Lemon, Dontavian Wicks, Johnny Wilson, Darius Cooper, Elijah Moore, I think those guys are better than Treylon Burks, than Luke McCaffrey, Antonio Williams, Dynami Brown. I think they're better than those guys. And then at tight end, I think we're better than the Washington Commanders. And I know Eli Stowers is in Philadelphia. I am not sure how much you're going to see Eli Stowers on the field this upcoming year, just because I think we're going to be trying to transition back to the running game a little bit more, and I don't think he's a blocking tight end. Speaking of the running game and the blocking scheme here, let's look at the offensive linemen. Here is where there's more talent, just overall, okay? Despite the injury history that we have here in Philadelphia with Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens, the starting five, I think just overall talent-wise is better. Jordan Mailata, one of the elite tackles in this league. Lane Johnson, despite his advanced age and the fact that he only plays about 10 to 12 games a year, he's still one of the best tackles in the NFL. Tyler Steen actually had a pretty good year last season, in my opinion, for just as an overall offensive lineman. Cam Jurgens, a little bit of a down year due to injury. Same with Landon Dickerson. And PFF says that this offensive line was not as bad as maybe Eagle fans are making it out to be based on their overall grades. They were a top 10 offensive line. I believe they were ranked like 7th or 8th in PFF. So despite the fact that they were not able to hold blocks, particularly Cam Jurgens and Landon Dickerson, overall this offensive line played well enough to not have the type of offensive output that we had last season. And it's why I put that blame more towards the skill guys like Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts, the offensive coordinator, A.J. Brown being a distraction, unfortunately, right? So I'm expecting an uptick. I'm expecting an increased performance here on this offensive line, which is why I give the edge to Philadelphia here in terms of offensive linemen, even though there is an injury concern here. The talent, I think, is just better overall in Philadelphia than I believe in Washington. Defensive line. Both defensive lines have run blocking or run defense issues. Philadelphia has a big run defense issue. Every game that we lost last season, we gave up 170 yards plus rushing. Teams beat us up. Every loss, right? So can Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and Moro Ajoma as the interior be better against the run? Because as long as they're able to stop and defend to be respectable against the run, I genuinely think the output on this defense can be a top 5, top 10 type of unit. People are projecting them to be like top 2, top 3. I'm not going to go that high. By the end of the year, I think we can have an output of like 7, 8, 9. I think that's a realistic expectation for this defense, especially considering it's year 3. For the Vic Fangio scheme here with these players, they've been here. They've done this system before. They know where to be. You're not changing the program by any means. So, Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter, Jordan. I mean, again, I think the talent here is better than it is in Washington. However, they made some improvements on the defensive line and brought in some quality players. We didn't really change much on the defensive line other than the second level where we combined linebacker with like Jonathan Grenard, Nolan Smith, Jalen Hunt kind of rotating as edge guys. So defensive line-wise, the biggest question mark here is Jalen Carter, obviously. Will he sign before training camp begins? And if he doesn't, will he be ready for the first game of the season? Or are his shoulders good? That's the other thing. If his shoulders are crap and they were like they were last season, this is going to be a long year for the Philadelphia Eagles. But it's not going to be the reason for the downfall. These linebackers in Philadelphia, like I said, I think it's just one of the best units in football. I think Jalen Hunt is excellent. I think Zach Bond, criminally underrated. I think he's brilliant. Jihad Campbell, incredible upside. I love Jeremiah Trotter Jr. I know the Eagles really, really like him. Jonathan Grenard, a grown-up who I believe is going to have a good year this year, but there's no track record of him saying he's going to be consistent year to year to year. I just like the acquisition. I like the way he speaks. I like the way his mindset is. I think he's going to be helpful for the young guys in this locker room, and particularly on this defense. And I think Vic Fangio likes guys who are veterans who've been there, done that. He's played in big games. He's had big seasons where he's gone after the quarterback. He could play football. I like the acquisition here. I like Jonathan Grenard. I love this linebacker room. I think it's just, like I said, one of the best in football. You got one of the best linebacker coaches, Bobby King, and then Vic Fangio with the linebacker background. You got to be smart as hell to play in this defense. All these guys, heady, smart, resourceful guys on the field, know where to be, know when to be, and are really good at tackling. All of them can tackle. I just love this linebacker room. I think it's one of the best in football. I don't have a lot of questions here at the linebacker spot for the Philadelphia Eagles. Lastly, let's wrap it up with the defensive back room here. Again, best in the division. Quinyon, Cooper, Tariq Woolen. They're just better than what the Commanders got in Amik Robertson, Mike Sandstrell, Sainristil. Jeez Louise, I can't get that name right. Nick Cross, Trey Amos, Quan Martin. Like these guys, Mitchell, Woolen, Dajim, Makuba, Epps. I mean, they're just better. And then I know there's talk about potentially getting Jordan Whitehead. Maybe you're able to get him for a cheap contract, and he would be an upgrade here as an additional depth piece on the roster. They're just better than these guys. Better than Washington in that front. So not many questions here on the back end for the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, it's been years since we've had questions for the Philadelphia Eagles defensive back room. Completely nailed the Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean pick. I did not expect this from Cooper DeJean. I expected it from Quinyon Mitchell. I thought it was the best cornerback in the draft when we got him. Excited when we got him. I did not expect Cooper DeJean to be the player that he was and as versatile of a player as he's turned out to be. So kudos to him. Kudos to them. Kudos to Tariq Woolen, who's coming in and playing brilliant in camp. Now, again, it's a little bit easier to play great in camp versus great against starting guys. There's a reason that Seattle let him go. Can he have a bounce back year? Yet to be seen. And then Andrew Makuba, he's got to be able to stay healthy. If he's on the field, he actually plays football pretty confidently and pretty well. It's just that he's a smaller guy. And being a smaller guy in a big man's league, playing as physical as he does is a little bit of a tough ask to stay for 16 games, and that's one of the important things we need him to be able to do. So I'm excited for this defense to take the field. I'm excited to see what Philadelphia Eagles are going to be doing as the new year comes along, as training camp is right around the corner. Now, that was the NFC East Division review with the Washington Commanders. I like their roster. I think it's greatly improved from last season. I think the loss of Cliff Kingsbury, though, that's going to be a big test for a guy like Jaden Daniels in particular. Now, again, I think he has the talent and the ability to overcome a loss or a dip in offensive coordinator, but it's still one of those things you have to look at and say to yourself, hey, how is he going to operate with a completely new voice in his head, a completely new system, with a new play caller who hasn't done it at a high level like Cliff Kingsbury has? Now, he's got the talent around him. Like, they have a good offensive line, as we've shown. They got good enough skill guys on the outside, like Terry, Luke McCaffrey. Antonio Williams got good upside. Traylon Burks had a resurgence last season. At tight end, they improved with, again, I'm going to try the name one more time, Chig Okonkwo. And then they also have John Bates, who's like more of a blocking tight end, so really helpful in the run game. And they had one of the better running attacks last season in football. So, and then they made improvements on every level of the defense, at defensive line, at linebacker, and at defensive back. I just like what they did this offseason. It was a quiet offseason for the Washington Commanders because nobody really expects them to do anything in the NFC East, particularly a lot of Eagle fans. I think they're going to surprise a lot of teams. Again, I have them winning about 8 games, but if Philadelphia is the 9 to 10 win team, like I said, like I don't look at the Commanders game when I look at it on the schedule, Philadelphia, and say, oh, wow, we're going to sweep them. No, that's going to be a dogfight, especially if these guys are healthy. Not going to be an easy round, not going to be an easy game for the Philadelphia Eagles to play. And even for the Cowboys, Washington's not going to be an easy game for the Cowboys, especially if they're healthy. So the NFC East overall has greatly improved. And the Philadelphia Eagles, in a year where I believe they're going in for a rebuild because they're implementing a relatively new offense, and if the rumors are true, they're going to kind of revamp this whole thing. I don't believe it. But if it's true, then there's going to be some growing pains. And the growing pains are going to start off early, as it always does. And since they're not going to play in the preseason, because they never do, we could start off slow in the beginning of the year. Probably like the first 5 or 6 weeks, it's going to start off slow. And if that's the case, all these teams can make up the ground in the first 6 weeks of the year, right? Game 1, I think we actually play the Washington Commanders. I'm going to look. Do I have the schedule here? Yeah. Yeah, we actually play them week 1 at 4:30 on Fox. So that's going to be a big game for the Washington Commanders and for the Philadelphia Eagles, for that matter. Being 1-0 in the division is an important way to start the season. That game is probably your best chance, Washington Commander fans, to go ahead and steal a game against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I'm going to put my money on the Philadelphia Eagles to win that game, but you do have to look at that game and say, hey, week 1 is a wonky week. You don't want to get caught by surprise. Washington can surprise some people. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. That is my NFC East Division review for the Washington Commanders, and we have hit every single team in the NFC East. Forgive the long-winded episode. I wanted to be thorough. I wanted to be fair to Washington Commander fans for talking about their team, because this is probably the last time I'm going to be talking about anyone's roster until the next offseason. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Give me your thoughts. Correct me if I'm wrong about certain things and certain players. I love the dialogue. I like learning a little bit more about everybody's team. So by all means, let me know in the comment section below, and hit subscribe and hit that like button for me. We really appreciate it on this side of the camera here. With that being said, everybody, thank you so much for watching today's episode, and I will see you next time as training camp begins. This is an exciting time, man. Football's around the corner. You can't ask for a better time in sports. Just can't. Football's the greatest thing out there in terms of sports to watch, and it's been too long since I've seen good quality football. And it's right here once again. So clap it up, everybody. This is an exciting time of year. And we will see you back here next time. Lock in with me at the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast. Hey, thank you so much for getting through this episode of the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast. If you want more content just like this, hit the subscribe button below to lock in with me. Thank you so much for your support on the opposite side of the camera, and check us out on other platforms in the description box below. And we'll see you back here next time for the next episode of the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast.